Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. This is the third time that the French Pavilion hosts a session on nuclear. The first time was in Glasgow and the second time in Sharm el-Sheikh. So it's great. It shows the government's commitment to nuclear. So we're really happy to host Madame Agnès Pannier-Runacher, Pannier-Runacher, who is the French Energy Transition Minister, following the announcement on December 2nd by ministers and heads of state of a pledge of tripling nuclear energy by 2050. And I think we want to thank you for your leadership, because this is in continuity with the Nuclear Alliance that you led in Europe with 14 states plus UK, as well as a declaration that was made under the leadership as well of OECD NEA in Paris at the end of September for OECD states. So this session will be dedicated to understanding what's behind this tripling of nuclear energy. So we will review scenarios from IAEA, from OECD NEA, from Europe, for France, and we'll see how we can achieve it. So thank you very much for hosting this session, and I'll leave you the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. As you know, I'm very happy to be here and to, celebrate the nuclear solution, among other, a toolbox of solutions that will allow us to converge to net zero carbon by 2050. All low-carbon energies are needed to substitute coal, petrol, and gas as fast as possible, and nuclear energy has clearly a key role to play in this regard. That's why France, along with the US and the UAE, initiated this declaration to triple nuclear energy capacity by 2050, which was endorsed in Dubai here. This is the first time, the first COP, that highlights the role of nuclear energy to fight climate change. This is a major success and, I would say, a long overdue. Indeed, with this COP, we are repairing a major injustice and a major mistake. For much too long, nuclear energy has been ignored in COPs and climate negotiation. I am therefore glad to see so many events on nuclear energy in COP28. This dynamic is built on scientific data. In this regard, I would like to commend the very important work done by the IPCC, International Panel on Climate Change, the International Energy Agency, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the Nuclear Energy Agency of the OECD. They have ranked nuclear power among the critical solutions to combat global warming and established factual data on which the declaration to triple nuclear energy capacity by 2050 is based. This declaration is a strong signal to the industry and all the stakeholders to be able to deliver. As you know, it is an ambitious goal, and I'm very glad to see the commitment of the industrial sector, which is represented today by Yves Debazaille, Director General of Nuclear Europe, and Hervé Maillart, Director General of the Stratégique contract for the nuclear sector between the government, the social partners, and the industry. I am working closely with my European partners of the Nuclear Alliance that you mentioned, and counterparts from all over the world to develop supporting policies at national, European, or international levels. As nuclear financing is of the utmost importance, we need the World Bank and multilateral development banks to start financing nuclear energy. That is true for the European multilateral regional banks, but that is true for any other multilateral development bank. The nuclear sector has to do its part as well. Much remains to be done. Indeed, tripling nuclear energy capacity requires major action from the companies because they are the ones to design and build industrial projects. They are the guardians of operational excellence and are the one to recruit hundreds of thousands skilled people by 2050. So that's why I would like to thank Sfen and your commitment for organizing this event and its long-time work in outreaching and disseminating scientific-based knowledge regarding nuclear energy. I would like also to thank the panelists and look forward to hearing your insightful exchange. Just to be very quick, we need nuclear, we need to succeed, and we need to have everybody on board. That means building capacities and capabilities in the next 20 years. This is a huge work, but I'm sure that we will succeed if we do it in a very collective and clever approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madame la Ministre. To welcome on stage Mr. Huang, Director of the Division of Planning, Department of Nuclear Energy at IAEA, and Mr. Michel Berthelemy, Strategic Policy Advisor, OECD Nuclear Energy Agency. Then Mr. Yves Debazaille, Director General for Nuclear Europe, Mr. Hervé Maillart, Délégué Général CSFN, Comité Stratégique de la Filière Nucléaire, and Mrs. Myrto Tripathi, President from the NGO Voix du Nucléaire. So, Mr. Huang, you have just updated your projection for IAEA, so you will explain to us what is your methodology that you are following today, and in what way also it's different from the OECD and EA work. And so I'll leave you the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we have slides from Mr. Huang.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting IAEA to the French Pavilion and join this very important discussion on tripling topics. I think so you can see from this slide that is this latest version from IAEA talking about the projection. We have been using this methodology for more than 40 years. We started this one in 1980s. Some people have some misunderstanding about the agency projection, talking about the current tripling issue. We have our basic methodology we have been used in the past decades. We have this so-called high case projection and the low case projection. When we look at this one, actually we collect all the information from the different sources, including the IAEA and their annual publication of the World Energy Outlook, and also their other publication, and also OECD and NEA study, and also some data sources on the statistic information about energy and the socio-economic development, and try to develop this, update this projection on the annual base. And if you look at this chart, because some people say, okay, this is an agency's expectation for achieving net zero. Actually, it's not, because we do this one in a consistent way that show that what could be look like based on the current information we have. For example, our low case projection is based on the current information on the market. And the projection is a little bit conservative, but it's still possible. But for the high case study, actually we collect the stated policy by the countries and the international organization or other stakeholders, and also look at some near future development and put them together, our expert to assess, then come up with this projection. This is also a little bit ambitious, but it's still plausible. But this is not exactly what we are talking about here, that's tripling. Tripling is like very ambitious target, and we expect the nuclear industry can work together to achieve that one in order to address this 1.5 degree of Paris Agreement. Our projection is actually more to show that based on available information now and what the nuclear could be look like in the coming decades, 2030, 2040, 2050. So from here, this year, the publication, you can see this is the third time this high case projection has been raised. And you can see this is also a good trend to show that the recognition of nuclear in addressing climate change, ensured energy security. So this actually is a very positive information we can obtain from this agency projection here. And I don't know, maybe later we can have some additional discussion, try to understand more about this methodology. For the next slide, you can see some breakdown of by regions. So in general, you can see the most dynamic area for coming decades based on the agency projection, low case and high case, in the Asian and the region, as most particularly for those potential embarking countries, but obviously also including China and Korea and other India. And obviously you can see very uncertain area is like Europe. Even we see a very positive development in Europe, including the nuclear has been included in the EU taxonomy together with gas as a transitional energy sources. But there's still some uncertainty there. And also North America, same has the issue. So even the US has the largest fleet of the nuclear power reactors. But their future, the possibility of the nuclear in their energy mix is still divided. So that's why we hope with the announcement recently, especially in the COP, because this kind of announcement, high-level announcement, including the minister just mentioned about this group of countries about supporting the tripling, and also French President Macron and the Belgian Prime Minister De Croo and the DG Grossi announced this coming nuclear energy summit in Brussels in March next year. And also other high-level declaration by different stakeholders. This is additional information we can take into account when we prepare the next version of the projection, because this information actually show more dynamic on the nuclear. So we hope that one can be reflected in the next version of the nuclear projection in 2024. And they'll give a more ambitious projection figure in 2024. So I can stop here.
Thank you very much. Yes. So Michel Berthelemy, so OECD NEA has published the first report on tripling of nuclear capacity back in 2022. So can you tell us about what methodology you use? Where do these numbers come from?
Thank you very much, Valérie. And actually, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's very good to be here at the French Pavilion, where we've been talking about nuclear for the last 3 years. And actually, I was coming on stage, I realized that one of the first time where we published our results was at the French Pavilion back in Glasgow in 2021. And back then, talking about nuclear at COP28 was not at all as mainstream as it is today. So I would like to particularly thank Minister Pannier-Runacher, because back then you were with us virtually, and your presence clearly played a key role so that the voice of nuclear was recognized in Glasgow. And we have, in particular, accomplished a lot since. If we go on the next slide, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this scenario that we published at the NEA last year. The story behind it is we at the NEA started to look at all the different projection pathways that the IPCC has reviewed in its 1.5 degree scenario. And when we look at how much nuclear is projected in 90 pathways of the IPCC that are compatible with reaching 1.5 degree by 2050, we found that on average, it means a bit less than 1,200 megawatt installed nuclear capacity. And when we first looked at this number, our heart sank a little bit. Compared to where we were, in particular where we were in Glasgow in 2021, we thought that was overly ambitious and that maybe it is unachievable. And then we started to do a different exercise. We started to do more of a bottom-up projection scenario where we look both at conservative and aspirational. Aspirational is an important word here for nuclear. And we tried also to break it down between long-term operation of installed nuclear, construction of large-scale nuclear new build, and advanced and small modular reactors. And the other thing we tried to do in our projection was to break it down between power application for the grid, as nuclear does today, and in addition, a range of non-power applications, particular for industrial hard-to-abate sectors, looking at nuclear energy for desalination, looking at nuclear energy for hydrogen, looking at nuclear energy for a range of industries that need both heat and electricity to decarbonize the carbon-emitting processes. And when we did this exercise, we found that actually all of that added together might just allow us to reach the tripling of nuclear capacity by 2050. And we were very pleased to see that this finding was recognized by world leaders at the beginning of the COP in the high-level declaration. Now, as I said, this is an aspirational projection. It's going to be hard, but it is possible. It is possible, in particular, we think at the IAEA, if we approach it as a collective endeavor, and if we try to strengthen international collaboration, international partnership, in particular among like-minded countries. And in that respect, back a couple of months ago, we organized with Minister Pannier-Runacher first ministerial meeting of the OECD in Paris at the end of September. The event is called Roadmaps to New Nuclear, where we convened 20 ministers and 40 industry CEOs. And we are very pleased to see that collectively there is clearly a strong ambition for like-minded countries to work together, in particular with inside this objective to triple installed nuclear capacity by 2050. And I'm very pleased to share that we will plan a second edition of this ministerial meeting in September again of 2024. Maybe I will finish by adding that among the key priority areas that were identified at this event, financing was clearly one of them. Supply chain was also very strongly represented in discussion alongside workforce development. But there was also specific interest in the area of SMR. There's a number of countries that are looking to accelerate deployment of SMR, in particular for a range of the non-power applications, in particular for industry. And in that respect, maybe my last point is just to thank again France for joining this new initiative that we launched at the IAEA on accelerating SMR for net zero, where we aim to bring together like-minded government and industry that are committed to accelerate SMR deployment. And with that, I'll hand the floor back to you, Valérie.
It makes a good transition because there's a big SMR initiative in Europe as well. So, Yves Debazaille, so in the Nuclear Alliance, 14 states in Europe have set up a common objective of 150 gigawatts by 2050. So can you tell us more about how we came up with this number and how we can achieve it?
Yeah, I think, so once again, the Minister Pannier-Runacher has a pivotal role, and she left, but pivotal role for that to recreate something which already existed, but in the past, but more informal, this so-called Nuclear Alliance. And one of the first tasks this Nuclear Alliance did is to set for itself an objective for 2050, because there was this idea that we need to have a target and set a target and see exactly how we can deliver this target. 150 is an increase by 50% compared to what we have today, so it's not really tripling. That being said, it's already an ambitious goal. Because we should remind for ourselves where we're coming from. The last reference scenario of the European Commission that was produced not a long time ago, by the way, 3 years ago, was the forecast was a decrease of the nuclear share down to 70 gigawatt installed capacity in 2050. So we compare to this last reference scenario, we are somehow doubling already this objective. How we can get there? It's clear that we need to look seriously at long-term operation, going beyond this 60 years threshold, and consider the idea of increasing the lifetime of our fleet up to 80 years, as we see already happening in the US. There is an important effort on research, development, and preparation for this potential duration of the existing fleet. That being said, this will not provide more than what we estimate between something around 25% of this objective. So it means that going to 150 gigawatt means 120 gigawatt of new build. So it's a significant number. If you try to estimate what it means 4 gigawatts per year at EU level. And having in mind that this will not happen anytime soon, it will take a while, like 7-10 years to embark into this new journey. In the years 2035, 40, it means we'll need like 8 gigawatts of new construction, new build each year across Europe. So it's a very ambitious objective when you think about it. And the decision has to be taken now, for sure. So this is where we are. We need conducive policies to get there. And this is where, and I will leave it on here because I think it's good to keep some time for discussion. We need the conducive policy to get there, and we need, with the new commission that will take office next year, the appropriate framework that recognizing that nuclear should be fully in a level playing field compared to other low carbon sources, with the appropriate financing, the appropriate consideration it deserves. And I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Yves. If you have trouble because it's pretty noisy to hear the speakers, the helmets give you both the sound and also the French translation in French for those who want the translation in France. So Hervé, Hervé, you're Delegate General from the Strategic Commission for Nuclear Industry in France. And so what is the plan for France? And also what is the plan of industry to execute? Because we have a very, very ambitious plan. Very, very ambitious plan in France.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valérie. A lot of things has been said already. So I would like to view the figures on another point of view. Nuclear energy is probably the lowest electricity we can have concerning low carbon electricity under most of renewable. It's also a very dense electricity because I will summarize, but a nuclear power plant is 1 kilometer square, and you can put 3 wind production on this kilometer square. So it's very dense in electricity, using a few percentage of concrete compared to other energy, or few percentage of steel. And the main characteristic, for example, if we want to provide electricity in countries that have not a stable grid for the moment, is the price. Because if you operate during 60 years, maybe 80 years, like in the US, the price of the electricity is very stable. The price of the nuclear electricity is due at approximately, so I think it's OECD figures, approximately at 70% due to the capital cost. So if you find a solution for the capital cost, you can have a very low price during 60, 80 years for the nuclear energy. So now if we go back to France, as Agnès Pannier said, in France, we will have a very interesting law at the beginning of next year. The text is under discussion now at the Parliament. We will push a lot on the renewables, obviously. We will extend the lifetime of all existing reactors up to 60 years and maybe more. So maybe 80 years. This has to still to be studied by the safety authority in France. We will start to build 6 EPR2, 1600 megawatts each, with the first concrete around 2027, maybe beginning of 2028, and the first starting of the first EPR2 in around 2035. We are working a lot to have the design finish between the first concrete. And we will study the construction of 8 more. The decision should be taken in the next, maybe the next 4 years, coming years. We will start also the construction of an electrical generator SMR called Nucléaire, 340 megawatts, and we should have the first concrete in 2030. And we are studying also the advanced reactors. And what is very interesting in this reactor is that they open to different usage of the nuclear energy. Heat production for food industry, heat for production for maybe heavy high towers and so on. Or transmutation for the recycling of the fuel. And obviously, some of the advanced reactors are intending to produce also electricity. So once we have said that, I think there are 3 major factors that we have to solve. The first one is how we finance all these projects. So this is the role of the government to explain us how this will be financed. Agnès Pannier is not here, but I think she agrees with that. The second very important factor is the industry. We shall have a local industry. And when I say local, I don't want to say we will send French reactors everywhere. The industry shall be local, provided jobs, well-paid jobs for people living in the country. It's not only operation, it's maintenance, it's construction, obviously. So finance, industry, and obviously skills. We will have in France to find 100,000 people, new people in the coming years, in the 10 coming years, half because of the retirements, half because of the new projects that we have to do. So we are working hard with the French government on those 3 topics. We are writing what we call a contract with the French government. It's a contract signed between the different stakeholders in France. It can be universities, it can be industrials, it can be banks or funds. So as the law has been put in the hand of the Parliament a few weeks ago, now we'll start to write the contract in detail, and we intend to sign this contract, let's say, on the second quarter of next year. So this contract will define all the objectives, all the action plans in order to fulfill what I have described.
Thank you very much. So Myrto, we have data from Europe that shows that your opinion is more in favor of nuclear, and that's been part of it was the work of the NGOs, the pro-nuclear NGOs. So can you tell us what you've achieved and also what's coming next? Is all the work achieved, or do you feel you still have some work to do?
Well, thank you very much, Valérie, and thank you for that invitation and for everything that was described by my fellow panelists before, because it justifies even more everything that I'm going to be ready to say and the role of the NGOs from now on. We need to remember that we get out slowly from 30 years of anti-nuclearism that had been almost institutionalized in all fields of societies, in media, in the academia, in politics, in regulations, in everything that webs around the projects and the nuclear industry, that leads to what I used to call some kind of a choking strategy. It's a web of disinformation that led into the actual project ecosystem and environment and led to the self-fulfilling prophecy that our friends opponent of the nuclear industry call the too long, too expensive. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that comes out of the situation where we were. However, you need to remember that we have only 30 years in front of us before we have to reach the net zero objectives in 2050. So we have 30 years to get out of that situation that we've inherited from 30 years of anti-nuclearism after Chernobyl. The role of the NGOs in here is several. The first one is really a question of democracy. The population that's in favor of nuclear is today not so much represented. It doesn't have the structure, the organization to carry its voice, and it's essentially being made invisible. It's discounted from the conversation. And we've had very recently in France a very good example of that when we had a public debate officially organized on the EPR2 of Pannier, where we crunched the numbers and made the very precise statistics that actually 2/3 of the floor was given to citizens that were anti-nuclear, when actually 2/3 of the population is in favor of nuclear. So 60% of the population was just erased, and that was first too because the voices of nuclear were there, and otherwise it would have been even worse. And we had to fight for that small portion of speech. The second reason is that the opinion is starting to change, but we still need to consolidate it and extend it. And for that, I want to pinpoint on the fact that this COP has certainly been the COP of nuclear, but mostly because it freed up the nuclear ecosystem that finally owns the subject and is really wanting willingly to carry it forward. The governments are there assuming the fact that they want to go nuclear, the industry as well, there's a lot of us, but you need to look around the COP to participate to the discussions at the European Commission booth, not so far from here, in the different pavilions of the different countries. The nuclear is not there yet. It's not completely into the conversation. It's starting, but it's only a start. The important thing on the consolidation of the opinion is there has been a poll made by the French regulator, ASN, in 2022 that said that 60% of the population thought that the information from NGOs and associations was the most reliable. Before the ASN itself, then the media, and then far below the industry. Of course, as you know, most of the NGOs by far are today still anti-nuclear. So that means that you have 60% at least of that information going to two people in the population that is going against nuclear. And it's particularly bad for a third reason that for me is very important to underline, is recruitment. Hervé talked about the workforce. Today in France, again, since we're in the French Pavilion, less young people as compared to the population, the proportion in the populations, are actually in favor of nuclear. We said that the industry needed 100,000 recruitments, out of which 60,000 engineers. That the nuclear industry itself, the energy transition, the other sectors are going to need engineers as well. And the country only graduates 40,000 people a year. So we do need absolutely to continue to convince the young people, the young generation, to join the nuclear industry and the rest, actually, of the energy transition sectors. Leads me to my fourth point, that I will go pretty fast because I think you all kind of mentioned it. The necessity for the nuclear industry to be in a level playing field. Those projects need to get out of what essentially has been a structural bias, a negative bias applied to it. It needs to be in access to financing from a private sector as from the public sector, including the European Union. It needs to be regulator, academia, again, media, the dictatorship of the short term imposed on the nuclear industry and the nuclear projects when it is a long-term industry. So that level playing field, I'm not going to go any further, but I think considering all those questions of regulations, legislations are put to the public, are put for consultation and consultation, certainly the population needs to be on board and accompany those consultations for the success of those projects, and also the fact that they may be next to this project in continuity during the entire lifetime of the sites once they're out. Fifth question is the delays. We talked about the consultations, the public debates, that incurs delays. We're not really in a situation where we want to accelerate the projects. What we want to do now is to avoid the unnecessary delays. Already, let's do that. And today, a delay of 1 year to put online an EPR2, it's 10 million tons of CO2 in the air, in addition. It is, I have them here, 4 million tons, of CO2 emissions more. 10 million tons of particulate matters, PM2.5, 700 tons of nitrogen oxides, 20 tons of sulfur oxides, and almost 2 billion meters cubes of gas imported more. That's 1 year of delay in putting an EPR2 online. So as populations and citizens, we really want that. And for my last point, thank you, but I think it's an important one, and it is the sixth reason why I think civil society needs to be kept on board very much, is that the nuclear industry, the nuclear energy is going to be the base load of the future energy systems. It is. I mean, it's physics. It's not my opinion. It's not magic. It's none of that. It is going to make up, in place of the fossils, the base load of the energy systems. So the nuclear industry is going to need a counterpart, someone to talk to with citizens to maintain that link in the dialogue, someone that's benevolent, that's constructive, but that still is capable to be critical and to represent the voice of the citizens at this stage.
Myrto. So I have two questions to the panel. So the first one, we talked a little bit about what nuclear can do beyond electricity. I know in the French scenario, we are moving from 25% share of the current energy mix based on electricity, and we have to double that by 2050, which, by the way, contributes to the decreasing consumption of energy, because you know electricity engines are very efficient. But we still have 50% that we need to decarbonize, and it's heat. And in our country, at least, there's more and more voices saying we're not going to have enough biomass. So how can nuclear contribute in the heating sector? You touched on a little bit, but what do we have in the scenarios more precisely on that? What examples do we have in the rest of the world and in Europe? Whoever.
I have the mic, so maybe I will start. It's an important point, and it was actually a point, having been at COP for a few days now, that has come back again and again in conversation about nuclear. When we looked at that at the NEA, there's a number of, when we talk about the, particularly in relation to small modular reactors, we tend to initially focus on what they can do for on-grid power. But actually, when we look at where there is substantive interest in SMR today, it is increasingly for a range of industrial players that maybe a few years ago could either consider biomass or could consider carbon offsets to meet the 2030 or 2050 climate goals, and they realize that they're actually going to have to decarbonize. And they realize that in many cases, particularly when they need heat, as you said, they're against the wall, and that options are very, very limited. Clearly, you've said it, biomass. There won't be biomass for everybody, and so nuclear is clearly emerging for them as one of the few solutions. Particularly, I'm talking about nuclear fission today for them to meet their climate commitments. I'll point to our two examples. One is not only on heat, but I think it's important to mention them because I think they're going to be driving the SMR market. Is the data centers. And I'm mentioning them because they have made a number of announcements. Maybe you've not noticed them, but do pay attention to them at COP28. Microsoft and both Google have been actively talking about nuclear as an option for them to decarbonize in the coming decades. And they need it because they realize that to decarbonize, they're going to need to have very, very reliable solutions. And nuclear is one of the few low-carbon technologies that can provide that to them. And so, pay attention to players such as Microsoft and Google because they're going to be driving the market in the years ahead. The other one is industry. I think there's one example that comes to mind looking outside France, and I will let others comment on what's happening in Europe and in France. But in the US, important to point to Dow Chemical, which is the second or the first largest chemical group in the world that currently rely on gas for some of the plants they have in South Texas. And they've committed to replace that and made, including investment into SMR technologies to decarbonize the facilities by the early 2030s. And they will need nuclear both for industry and for heat. And clearly, they're gonna be moving at pace. And as long as nuclear and this emerging nuclear technology can meet the timeline that they need, there is a very strong window of opportunity for nuclear to decarbonize these chemical sectors and more broadly heavy industry. But I'll pass to the other panelists to comment.
Mr. Huang, I think currently the IAEA lists 40 reactors in the world that are making heat, mostly urban heat, right? And I've seen also that there were announcements in China for a big, major urban heat system which would address the needs of 1 million people.
Yeah, let me do this way. First, let me add additional information about projection, which I just mentioned earlier. That when agency apply this methodology, we use this we call the energy simulation, scenario simulation tool to ensure the consistency of our projection over the 40 years time. And during that time, we take into account the long-term operation issue there, and also we closely followed what country has announced or grant the long-term operation permit, because make sure that our projection can be really good reflection of the trend of each country who are using nuclear power. This is one thing to the previous point. And the second one to the question you just asked about this non-power application. Obviously, we all agree that when we look at all this decarbonization needs, decarbonize electrification is one, and another one is to decarbonize other sectors. So we see the great potential of nuclear for helping other sectors to decarbonize their emission, reduce their emission. But when we look at this one, we also have some statistics that show that nuclear power plants already support district heating. Quite a number of the reactor has been supporting that one in the past decades. But we want to see more application on that part. In the meantime, we also try to see how much nuclear can really support other, like so-called this very important energy carrier, hydrogen. This has been also very popular. So we are looking at what nuclear can do, and we work with some of our partners to conduct some studies to understand what that means in terms of economic value and also the industry value of the nuclear in supporting hydrogen. So we see the great potential of the nuclear and especially SMR. We talk a lot about. We understand that NEA projection has gave a very high expectation on SMR. I think that's very good because we want to see the more role to be demonstrated by the SMR. So that's why agency made also our efforts. Our DG launched this nice initiative, try to address two issues which are actually facing the nuclear industry, particularly for the SMR deployment, development and deployment. One is on the regulatory track, try to see how we can help to improve the process, efficiency of the process, of the licensing process, which is obviously an issue facing in Europe and also in US. And another one is try to work with the industry, try to find some way to standardize some process of the technology development and the production and also construction to make sure that this kind of project, big project can be delivered on time, on budget. So this is something agency is working with the member state on this. Another one is which actually relevant to this topic, that is Atom for Net Zero initiative. Because when we have a projection, we understand that in order to achieve the projection of agency based on the current policy and also the ambitious projection even mentioned by in the COP, tripling, we need some good understanding about what can happen, what it needs. So we actually launched this initiative 1 year ago, try to tap the potential by doing some scenario studies with the countries and also stakeholders to make sure what we really need to be conducted on the ground to ensure all this ambitious target can be achieved. This one's another thing. And the last but not least is the SMR portal, which is agency established. We put all the information related to SMR from the safety, security, and the safeguards, and also technology development on one platform to make our member state to access that information, to understand the latest development and to work together more in a collective manner. Because currently, if you look at over 80 different designs of SMR in the world, very few now in the operation and under the construction. I think one is in Russia, is a floating reactor in operation for over 22 more years. The latest one, which you just mentioned about HTGR, which was announced commercial operation just 3 days ago. And the other three under the construction in Argentina, in Russia, and also in China, SMR. So we want to see more the project on the SMR can be kicked off very soon. And then make sure this projection of the high expectation of SMR can be fulfilled in the coming decades.
Thank you very much. I have a last question for Yves, because Myrto mentioned that we don't have necessarily yet a level playing field in Europe. So, and we also talked about SMRs, and there's a plan for an SMR initiative in Europe. And we had a good news this week because the European Council included nuclear, voted to include nuclear in the Net Zero Industry Act. So where are we right now, and what do we need to have a level playing field?
Yeah,
an equal level playing field.
To answer very quickly, yes, we need a level playing field. So I could stop here. Are we there yet? The answer is no. We see some good progress on some aspects. So exactly the one you were mentioning, nuclear will probably be accepted as a strategic technology to address net zero targets, which is something which was not a given. And I must say the initial proposal of the European Commission was not included in nuclear as a strategic solution. So we've seen some progress on this. There are other files where there are interesting developments, like, for example, in electricity market reform, where also nuclear is eligible to the contract for difference as a low-carbon source. I don't think this is something we would have seen even like 3 years ago. So good achievements. Probably the next one will be the creation of the SMR Industrial Alliance you were referring to. This will also give a very interesting political momentum that we'll have to do something with. And I would say on this, this will be also the responsibility of the industry itself to making sure that this alliance delivers. And this is where we'll have to also be sure that we'll have everyone on board. And we were, on your previous question, the question of production of heat, but also maybe hydrogen or any other application will be one of the key aspects of this alliance, because it will also play a role of having a platform together with intensive users. It's good to explain what nuclear can provide, but I think it's even better if we have direct feedback from intensive users, have a dialogue with them saying what exactly they need. They are the best to express exactly what they need. And this is where we need to make sure that we create this dialogue, have some conversation, sector by sector, on how we can address their concerns. Because the concerns are massive. This is what we see every day now as Nuclear Europe. We have intensive users knocking on the door saying, okay, now we understand that solar panel will never solve the issue of the steel manufacturer. It's impossible. Maybe it can contribute, but it cannot be the only single solution. So this is a dialogue where they are asking us very bluntly, okay, can I have an SMR or whatever? And the answer is not that straight. So we need to have this dialogue. And I think this is where we stand. My last point will be where we have a lot of progress to make today. It's still on EU funds. None of them today nuclear is eligible to. So I think on that, there is a lot of work to be done. This is a long-term target because we'll see a lot of resistance on that as well. and it will be the job of the next Commission to start and address this topic together with nuclear alliance countries, how we can, fund by fund, make some progress. I will stop here.
Thank you very much. Yes.
5 seconds, really
Yes.
5 seconds. In the discussion, we shall not forget the fuel also, because we
That's right.
discuss about the heat, industrial heat, hydrogen production, and so on, but the fuel can be also a subject of transmutation in the new reactors, advanced reactors, and we will have probably also in Europe to develop a fuel fabrication for those reactors, whatever it is. It's riso, it's molten salt.
Yeah, and I think we had these last few days another declaration on the fuel side for both, of course, conversion, enrichment, but also, as you said, Hervé, for fuel fabrication.
For the last one, is that indeed in the coming weeks, in the coming year, there will be public consultations to allow for those fuel cycle front-end and back-end projects to come online. And we've seen what happened with the CGO project in France, the deep depository geological site, who still is not online, was lost years of just being confronted to very small portion of populations within the anti-nuclear movements. We know that the DB2 enrichment plant needs to be voted in for its extension. It's critical for the independence of the European Energy Union. And finally, there's also the storage pull from LAG. So even on the fuel cycle, on the front and the back end, the public and the comprehension, the understanding of the public opinion is going to be critical.
Yeah, thank you very much. So thank you very much for being with us. There will be a replay on the ministry website. And so please forward this. We're going to post the replay on our social networks. Thank you very much to all. Thank you.